whatever seems to have appeared in the public space does not really constitute credible evidence in the eyes of law.
All right, let's open this up to our guest. Madhav Nalapad is geopolitical expert and director of geopolitics and international relations at the Manipal University. Glenn Carl is former CIA officer and author. Rajiv Dogra, former Indian diplomat, is joining us. Shehzad Poonawala of the BJP and Shyam Prasad Mekar of the Congress will both be joining us as well. Let me start with you, Dr. Nalapad. You know, these are some of the utterances that Pannu has said just in the last few years. In September of 2023, he said, Indo-Hindu, leave Canada, go to India. In October of 2023, he said, right after the Hamas attack in Israel, we will do a Hamas-like attack on India. In November 2023, he said, don't fly Air India on the 19th of November, your life will be in danger. In December 2023, he said, we'll shake the very foundations of Parliament on December 13th. This is not exactly, charitable stuff or benign stuff that this man has been spewing. He has been involved in inciting his supporters to attack Indian missions in London, in San Francisco, in Brisbane. Why should the US Justice Department be holding the can for such a person?
Well, Zaka, one good reason could be that this gentleman, he's not really a gentleman, but anyway, let's be polite, basically is an informant of some US agency or the other. And possibly he's an informant about what exactly is taking place in the very, very shadowy, and if I may say so, terror organizations that he's connected with. The problem is that if you're an informer, you need to have a low profile. You can't have a high profile, and you can't take an active part in fomenting violence. You can't take an active part in supplying weapons and money and other logistical help. You can't take an active part in killing innocent people in a fellow democracy, in a friendly country. You can't be that and at the same time have the protection of being an informant. That is actually crossing a red line. And in my view, that red line has been crossed by the US Justice Department. Let's say, for example, there is an informant of agencies in India.
Okay.
And that person has been doing, has been helping and carrying out and making his people carry out acts of violence, terror in the United States. Do you think the US is going to understand? Oh, yes, of course, he may be your informant, so we are protecting him. Quite frankly, Zaka, it's a disgrace that a man like this, who is a known facilitator of terror, he's not simply an informant. I'm sure he is. Otherwise, he wouldn't be given this level of protection. But the fact is, a man who has actively connived and is gloating over the killing of hundreds of people, innocent lives in India, and who wants to kill even more, and who wants to, to basically trample on the sovereignty of India, this person is being protected by the US Justice Department.
So let me ask Glenn Carl this. Mr. Carl, the problem is this. There is a double standard element involved, as Dr. Nalapad was saying just a moment ago. Yesterday, we had news of the IDF going into Rafah and killing Yahya Sinwar, and justifiably so. More than 10 years ago, US Navy SEALs went into Abbottabad, right in the heart of Pakistan, and killed Osama bin Laden. Justifiably so. No one waved the white flag back at that time and said, oh, how can you kill a Saudi citizen? No one yesterday waved a white flag or shed tears for Yahya Sinwar. If that is kosher, then why is the white flag being waved for a person who has actively incited mobs to go and attack the Indian High Commission in London, the Indian consulate in San Francisco, the Indian mission in Brisbane in Australia? Why should that be kosher?
There are a number of fundamental points, none of which have you touched upon in the introduction or in the initial discussion. First, The First Amendment, free speech guarantee in the United States, is central, critical, the core, really, of the American system of government. And the courts over 250 years have developed the doctrine of, well, what is protectable, guaranteed as free speech? And the courts have reached the assessment that free speech is actually speech designed to protect speech that you hate, not speech that you find acceptable, up to the point of directly causing violence. But simply, literally, to call for the overthrow of the United States government, as Donald Trump fundamentally does multiple times per day, is protected speech. And therefore, to kill somebody for that is a grievous crime. Also, assassination, the equivalence of Osama bin Laden with this operation is not really an accurate one.
So let me just delve into that for a moment, if you will, Mr. Karl. Please indulge me. When he said that Indo-Hindus should leave Canada, go to India, we will do a Hamas-like attack on India. Don't fly Air India on the 19th of November. Your life will be in danger. Are these not active threats to peaceful populations? When he incites a crowd to attack the Indian High Commission in London, is that not, speech translating into violent action?
It may well be. I mean, I have no brief to defend this fellow at all. And the things that you quote him saying are terrible from any perspective and not acceptable. However, that doesn't justify an assassination. What it certainly would call for, I would say, is vigorous prosecution of the fellow to see if what he's done, legally adjudicated by a court, has crossed this line. But that's not the same thing as sending a hit squad.
All right. So Shehzad Poonawalla of the BJP, Glenn Carl, former CIA officer, saying that A, you can't compare Pannu to the likes of an Osama or a Yahya Sinwar, and 2, he says he's only saying stuff, and saying stuff is protected by the First Amendment of the US Constitution.
First of all, Glenn, we consider Mr. Pannu and his organization to be a terrorist organization. And therefore, if somebody is a terrorist, would you allow us to give somebody who in your opinion is a terrorist, who's acting against the state of the United States, to be given safe haven to spill venom and poison and to talk about the disintegration of your country? I'm sure you wouldn't. Would you want Indian land to be... Sir, in our country, sir, we hear the other side. We are the country of Mahatma Gandhi, so we hear the other side and we also allow the other side to speak. So I would be very obliged if you could allow me to speak. Secondly, sir, what if supposing the land of India was used to call for a separation of a particular part of Canada, let's say Quebec, where there is a separatist movement, and the part of India is used to allow for an entire movement to be channelized against Canada, that Canada should be split into pieces, splintered into pieces? Would you allow that? Would your country consider that to be kosher? Would it be in accordance with international rule of law? Sir, also, while India has full respect for international rule of law, we are very clear that we do not need lectures from somebody, and I might want to remind you, do you know what 1983 December represents? I'll remind you. US diplomat Harry Weatherby was found guilty of espionage in my country. He obviously left the country. He was a US government official. We have full respect for United States Justice Department. If you have come to a conclusion about a certain individual, he is no longer associated with the government of India, as has been clarified by the Ministry of External Affairs. But I want to ask you, sir, that when Mr. Trudeau says that they had credible allegations, I don't know what credible allegations means, maybe your English is better than mine, you can explain to me. And now when he testifies in front of a committee, he concludes that they didn't have any quote-unquote hard evidence against India's involvement in the case of the killing of Nijjar, who I don't know why they glorify as a great Canadian citizen, but he has no evidence, he just had intel. On the basis of that, what action can India take? India is doing every bit, but please tell me, now this Nijjar fellow, who was denied visa by Canada 3 occasions, he has suddenly become such an important aspect. Sir, okay. If let's assume one more thing, sir, just last one question. If supposing the assassination, tragic assassination of Kennedy would be replicated on the streets of Delhi and we would celebrate it joyously, would you allow it? I would not. I love Kennedy. I think he is one of the greatest presidents America had. But our Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi's assassination is celebrated routinely by Khalistanis. And it is done on the streets of Canada. Do you think that that is acceptable?
let
And
Mr.
the worst
Kal-
thing
let
is that
Mr. Kal-
Congress is today
Yeah.
standing in support with this narrative.
I'll get to the Congress in 1 second. Let Mr. Kal respond, and then I'll go to the other guests as well. Yeah, Mr. Kal.
A challenge to respond to so many different points. But any American official involved in foreign affairs spends his or her entire career listening to exactly the sort of denunciations and calls for violence and characterizations of American evil that you describe. And that's life. And yes, those people should be able to say that. And if they wish to call for the reinstitution of slavery in the United States and the division of the country into multiple parts, I will oppose those propositions, but I have nothing to say about it. It's the issue of actually inciting violence. And there were so many other points, it's hard to recall what they were, but I think fundamentally the issue is, can one state commit violence in another? And we all know, of course, that it happens, but no state may allow it without seeing its system undermined.
You mentioned some time ago this whole January 6th insurrection. Why is there such a case against Donald Trump? Not that he was going out and wielding an axe or shooting a gun. He was inciting people. He used words to incite a mob, which then went and attacked the U.S. Capitol building. But anyway, be that as it may, since you were mentioning, and I think Rajiv Dogra would be well versed in this, I remember a few years ago in Pakistan, there was a US CIA agent who shot at a suspect right in the heart of Lahore, and within 24 hours, this man was packed off, and it was kosher. I mean, nobody ever heard of him, nobody ever, brought a case against him in a court of law, nothing. So that's absolutely, the gentleman's name sort of skips my mind, but I'm sure you're aware of this case, Ambassador Dogra, having served there.
Absolutely. Pakistan made a lot of song and dance about why the sovereignty was being misused and infringed upon by this American who was a contractor's man. He didn't even have diplomatic immunity.
Exactly.
But within 24 hours or 48 hours, as you said very rightly, America had put so much of pressure, paid so much of money that they could extract that man out of Pakistan because he was American. So the double standards that you were talking about applies in case of an American citizen and American lives.
Raymond Davis, that's his name, sorry. Raymond Davis.
Raymond Davis, yes, exactly. But as far as Indian lives are concerned, or lives anywhere in the global south are concerned, America has quite another standard. And in fact, I was reflecting on this as I was listening to your American guest, that America seems to be acting like a global investigator, a global prosecutor, and a global chief justice. Once it decides on something, like the Department of Justice seems to have decided without giving any real evidence that this man is really the accused man and we want him. Now, the result of all this is that America may want him. But let me remind that as far as the jury and justice of Indian public is concerned, please do remember that America has reached the level of dislike that it had reached in 1971-72. 1 year back, America was in the list of one of the more admired countries or liked countries in India or with Indian people. Today, if you were to do an opinion poll, it is one of the most distrusted countries.
Okay.
And I am not surprised that this is so.
So, Mr. Meka of the Congress Party, Mr. Meka, I'm reading from the Ministry of Home Affairs Gazette about the charge sheet against Panun. He's involved in anti-national and subversive activities. He intended to harm the sovereignty and territorial integrity of India. He has links with terror outfits in Punjab and other parts. He heads a frontal organization of Khalistani terrorist outfits, the most prominent being Sikhs for Justice, SFJ, propagates active sedition from India on the grounds of religion and region. Why should any opposition party or anyone in this country seemingly hold a brief for this man, seemingly, whether it is knowingly or unwittingly, be asking questions that the US Justice Department seems to be asking, echoing those questions for a man whose charge sheet that I just read out to you?
Jaka, see, I will let the government of India deal with the issue because it's a sensitive matter. See, I'm not here to cast aspersions on USA or to give a clean sheet to somebody like Mr. Pannu, right? So that's not your expectation, right? So simple thing is, as a political leader, I am saying this is a sensitive issue. It's for the government of India to handle. We will let the government of India handle this issue. At the same time, we want to remind our friends like USA that you need to understand every country has the same rights as you. That, yeah, there are people who are working against us as a country, as a society.
Okay.
And if they are being sheltered on the soil of USA, then USA need to act on them. Having said that, I think I would request the government of India to come clean to the people of India, saying, hey, these are the proofs we have. This is what we have already communicated to the government of the USA. And that's all we need to do. I don't know. I don't want to get into the details.
He was designated as per... One second. He was designated a terrorist. Mr. Meka, let's not talk over each other. Mr. Meka, please listen to me.
Making this a debate point
please listen to me.
Show.
Mr. Pannu was designated as a terrorist as per the MHA Gazette in 2022. And I just read out the entire charge sheet of what he is accused of. By the way, there is an Interpol Red Corner notice against this man. All that America needs to do, because he's in New York and he's an American/Canadian citizen, he has passports of both countries, all that America needs to do is to extradite him, is to apprehend him and to put him on a flight to New Delhi.
That is exactly what we need to ask the Americans to do. Did we ask them? Are we holding them accountable for our relations?
Are you holding the Americans accountable? When Canada, the Canadian Prime Minister stood up and said Indian agents are involved in the killing of Niger, you expel Canadian diplomats. Will you expel American diplomats now?
First of all, Zaka, I think we need to stop playing this double game where a panelist comes on your show, which is one of the most watched shows, and he says, no, we stand with the government of India, yet members of parliament, Sagarika Ghosh, Mahua Moitra, the Mumbai Congress official Twitter handle, salivate at the prospect of saying that what the Canadians are saying is absolutely gospel truth. Even though the Canadians themselves have exposed Prime Minister Trudeau, saying that, look, this man, for his own vote bank politics, made a huge allegation against a country like India, which is a country of 140 crore Indians, and then comes out and says, I have no evidence, I only have intelligence, they need to look into their systems. The entire ecosystem stands in Modi Virod in doing Desh Virod. And now Shyam Prasad Mekka, sir, please, sir, let's not interrupt. Zaka gives everyone time. This is not that platform where you need to shout over me. So let me have my say, then you can have yours. So the point is, who is saying the right thing? Is it Mumbai Congress? Is it Sagarika Ghosh? Is it Mahua Moitra? Or is it Shyam Prasad Mekka? Let's understand that. Question number one. Okay. Question number two. Again, when it comes to the American situation, there was a government of India official against whom America has responsibly, the State Department has brought certain charges. We respect their rule of law and we respect their processes. And therefore we said, look, this person is no longer associated with the government of India. Having said that, it is now incumbent on the Americans to respect our processes of law. For whatever it's worth, the fact of the matter is that both Nijjar and Mr. Gurpatwant Singh Pannun are declared people who are against India. They are terrorists. They are supporting terrorist activities. They are supporting the breakup of India. We have given dossiers and charges against them. And forget everything else. They both advocate the same thought process that led to the murder and assassination of Indira Gandhi. I want to ask both Mr. Glenn and Mr. Meka one question alone. Do you consider Indira Gandhi's death or killing to be a terrorist act? I do. And if that is a terrorist act, how is it that much more acts like those are promoted and supported by Pannu and by Nijjar in their respective lands where
Mr.
they are,
Vika, Mr.
and
Vika,
you guys
respond.
come here and say that how dare we question those two and call them terrorists?
There are tableaus that are taken out celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi, and she clearly is, one of the tallest leaders of the country, of the Congress party. Why should the Congress party, try to echo what the US Justice Department is saying or what the Canadian Prime Minister is saying when, on those lands, the killing of an Indian Prime Minister is being celebrated? Certainly in Canada it was.
Jaka.
Even Pannu does.
Jaka.
Yeah.
See, Shahjad was actually mixing up things. I'm clear in what I'm saying. Second, who will accept if somebody celebrates the killing of our Prime Minister?
Mumbai Congress.
No, wait a minute.
Mumbai Congress.
Shahjad. Thoda patience.
Is Mumbai Congress wrong?
See, no, wait. See, you are saying who is right, Sagarika or Mahua or myself?
Or Mumbai Congress?
We are a country of 140 crore people. We will have our opinions. As far as external affairs are concerned, it is the government of India which speaks. If we have issues with our own government, we will talk it here. Second, Shahjad, you are so intelligently speaking about asking the Congress, oh, these guys celebrated the killing of Indira Gandhi. See, irony is we have people who celebrates the killers of Gandhi within our own country.
Let's keep this.
What are we going to do?
Now you've gone into a
Let's have a
complete
serious debate.
tangent. You've gone into a completely
you tell
different
me.
tangent now.
No.
So, stop all that.
Okay,
politicizing.
let's get. I want to get some
Okay.
closing comments now because I'm coming to the concluding part. So, Mr. Kal, I want to come back to the moot point. The moot point is, and I understand the Justice Department, has its own ways. First Amendment laws protect free speech, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the standards have to be the same. If there is someone here in India using Indian soil, using an Indian platform to actively, let's say, cry out loud that Texas should secede or California should secede from the Confederation of the United States, will that be kosher? Will that be acceptable? And I want to also go back to that whole Raymond Davis incident. He's a man, an American national, not even covered by diplomatic immunity, shot dead 2 people in a market in Lahore. And then they put him on a flight within 24 hours and he escaped. And no one's ever heard of him after that.
Well, the case in Pakistan is a pretty clear violation of the judicial process of Pakistan, I would argue, particularly because the man didn't have diplomatic immunity. If the Indian fellow in New York had diplomatic immunity, it would be a different world, and he would be on a plane back to Delhi already. If he hasn't been, I don't think he has been. So that's a significant point. Your question about what if someone were denouncing or calling for the overthrow of the United States someplace, what would the United States do? As a general rule, well, that's too bad for the United States. That's just how it is. If they're actively working to commit violence, then the person can be charged.
Is Mr. Pannu not actively working to commit violence? I mean, all the utterances he's made and what led to violence outside Indian missions in London and San Francisco and Brisbane, would that not be considered going past First Amendment protections? Wouldn't that be considered a speech that is resulting in violent action?
Yeah, I think that as described in the quotes that you gave, I think do sound that way. That's not for me as a CIA officer to decide, but it certainly seems like a plausible, strong case to make to prosecute the person. And if there is an extradition treaty, then probably to have the man extradited. But,
there is an Interpol red corner notice against this man, and from what I understand, the United States is also a signatory to Interpol. They are bound by Interpol to extradite people whenever there's a red corner notice, cases against individuals in other countries. But be that as it may, Dr. Nalapad, I want to conclude the debate very quickly. Do you see this also going the case of Niger and going the Canada way, or will there be a slightly different response from the Government of India and the Ministry of External Affairs? So far, much of it, till yesterday, till this envelope was opened in the Court of Law in Manhattan, much of this was being sort of handled behind the scenes, etc.
Well, Zaka, I'd like to point out that under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, substantive relations with the United States, including in defense and security, especially in defense and security, have been built to a level that's not been seen before under any other Prime Minister. And quite frankly, what our US friend is saying is unfortunately reminiscent of what I thought was a disappearing mindset, that only the people of European descent, only the Atlantic is important. The Indo-Pacific is not. Certainly the Asians are not. I mean, implicitly, that's the implication. And I would like to say that that's what led to the Ukraine war, for example. And of course, so far the CIA is concerned, but WMD, etc. As someone, who has actively sought and to a strong US-India partnership in defense and security, and who supports Prime Minister Modi in that partnership, the only beneficiary of this kind of activity will be China now Russia.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Ambassador Dogra, and then last 10 seconds to Shehzad. Ambassador Dogra, I'm really sort of coming to the end of the show. Yeah.
I'll be very brief. I agree with you, Zaka, that if there is a red corner alert, it must be respected. And it can only be respected by America sending Panun back by the next flight, which it will not do. And hence the doubt as to why America is suddenly gunning for India in the last few months.
Okay.
What does it hope to achieve? I think that's the big question.
No, it's a simple thing. The America will not put him on the next flight out, not because they don't believe in the charges that have been framed against him or the convictions against him. They simply will not do it because he holds a US passport. It's as simple as that. Shehzad, yeah, final word.
With due respect to Mr. Glenn, I'm sure he has served his country very loyally. But sir, this entire notion of the Western world, and we cherish our relationship with the West, but this notion that the white man's terrorist is the world's terrorist, but India's terrorists are not your terrorists. This thing, you should remember Hillary Clinton. Those snakes that are being raised in your backyard will not just come for us. They will come for you too at work. And Congress party will stand with Ilhan Omar. Congress party will go and say 26/11 was done by RSS. Congress party will say Karkare was not killed by Kasab. They will stand with the Pakistani narrative on surgical strike and Balakot. This is what the Congress has been reduced to.
All right.
Anything
I
in
got
Virodha.
to wrap up. We'll see how this story plays out. So you have two fronts now that have been opened with the Canadians, an open and public sparring that's been going on, diplomats expelled, etc. Whereas with the US, it's been done slightly more behind the scenes. Still, of course, this envelope was opened in a court of law in Manhattan. We'll see how that progresses. Quick break. On the other side, what next in the conflict in West Asia? I will decode that on the other side. I also got a chance to sit down with the former National Security Advisor of Israel. He was NSA to Benjamin Netanyahu between 2011 and 2013. Yaakov Amidror. That interview on the other side.
ה-DNA מעביר למאגר משטרת ישראל, למאגר DNA. בשני המקרים אנחנו מוצאים התאמה ליחיא סינואר, ככה שיש לנו בעצם גם DNA, גם טביעת אצבע וגם שיניים של יחיא סינואר. כל הנתונים האלה מצויים בידי משטרת ישראל ובידי שב"ס, ולמעשה אנחנו משתמשים בנתונים קודמים על מנת להשוות.
שיהיה לכם דרך הצלחה ושאר כוח על הכל.
תודה, דרום אחד, רות הישר, יוצאים לדרך. טוב, אנחנו פה יוצאים למבצע שצריך להגיד, סגירת מעגל עם, שכולנו תקווה עם רב המרצחים שטבח בבני עמנו לפני כשנה בדיוק, בחג הסוכות, בכמה סימבולי, שלשמחתנו הרבה, לוחמינו האמיצים חיסלו אותו בעזה בחג הזה. אנחנו מכאן יוצאים למבצע שנקרא הקפה ראשונה. המבצע הוא בעצם ליווי, הבטחה של כוחותינו, שמירה ומבחינתנו מוכנות. כולנו פה שותפים למשימה לאומית וחשובה מאוד, ומכאן אנחנו יוצאים לדרך.
Today, the mastermind of this day of sheer evil is no more. Yahya Sinwar is dead. He was killed in Rafah by the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages. Hamas is holding 101 hostages in Gaza who are citizens of 23 countries, citizens of Israel, but citizens of many other countries. Israel is committed to doing everything in our power to bring all of them home. And Israel will guarantee the safety of all those who return our hostages. But to those who would harm our hostages, I have another message. Israel will hunt you down and bring you to justice. The axis of terror that was built by Iran is collapsing before our eyes. Nasrallah is gone. His deputy Muhsin is gone. Haniyeh is gone. Def is gone. Sinwar is gone. The reign of terror that the Iranian regime has imposed on its own people and on the peoples of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, this too will come to an end. All those who seek a future of prosperity and peace in the Middle East should unite to build a better future. Together, we can push back the forces of darkness and create a future of light and hope for all of us.
האיש הזה תכנן, יזם, נתן פקודות, ביצע, ואני מניח שאם היינו משאירים אותו בחיים, הוא היה עושה את זה גם קדימה. אנחנו קצת אחרי ה7 באוקטובר וקצת לפני שמחת תורה, וב-11 ימים שבין השנה של הלוח העברי לבין השנה של הלוח הלועזי, אנחנו סוגרים חשבון עם סינואר שאחראי ליום המאוד מאוד קשה הזה שהיה לנו לפני שנה.
DNA מעביר למאגר משטרת ישראל, למאגר DNA. בשני המקרים אנחנו מוצאים התאמה ליחיא סינואר, ככה שיש לנו בעצם גם DNA, גם טביעת אצבע וגם שיניים של יחיא סינואר. כל הנתונים האלה מצויים בידי משטרת ישראל ובידי שב"ס, ולמעשה אנחנו משתמשים בנתונים קודמים על מנת להשוות.
שיהיה לכם דרך הצלחה ושאר כוח על הכל.
תודה, דרום אחד, רות הישר, יוצאים לדרך. טוב, אנחנו פה יוצאים למבצע שצריך להגיד, סגירת מעגל עם, שכולנו תקווה עם רב המרצחים שטבח בבני עמנו לפני כשנה בדיוק, בחג הסוכות, בכמה סימבולי, שלשמחתנו הרבה, לוחמינו האמיצים, חיסלו אותו בעזה בחג הזה. אנחנו מכאן יוצאים למבצע שנקרא הקפה ראשונה. המבצע הוא בעצם ליווי, הבטחה של כוחותינו, שמירה ומבחינתנו מוכנות. כולנו פה שותפים למשימה לאומית וחשובה מאוד, ומכאן אנחנו יוצאים לדרך.
For more than a year now, as tens of thousands of Gazans were killed, the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, had eluded the Israeli military. But that ended on Thursday. Yesterday, the full force of Israel's military and security establishment was brought to bear on the butcher of thousands of Israelis. For months now, he had given shrift to the IDF and its chasing squads. It was widely believed that he was holed up underground in Gaza and that he had taken to keeping himself in the company of hostages in order to protect his life from Israeli hellfire. In the end, though, he was killed above the ground along with 2 other militants with no signs of any hostages nearby. The Israeli authorities said they had confirmed Yahya Sinwar's death using dental records and fingerprints. His DNA was also tested for confirmation. Sinwar's death was the most severe blow to Hamas's leadership after more than a year of the escalating conflict in the Middle East. It immediately plunged the war in Gaza into a new and rather uncertain phase. There was both hope and trepidation. Hope that the war might finally end and pave the way for an all-elusive ceasefire. Trepidation for the families of the remaining hostages, and there are close to 100 of them, that their loved ones might be killed to avenge Sinwar's death. This came less than 3 weeks after Israeli forces killed the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, in an airstrike south of Beirut. Some were hoping that Sinwar's death might signal an end to the Israeli invasion of Gaza. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated that the offensive will not stop. Even if that meant that all 3 deadly Hamas leaders, Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, the political head, and Mohammad Deif, the military commander, the very engineers of last year's deadly surprise attack on southern Israel on the 7th of October, all 3 of them have now been killed. Netanyahu told Israelis and the world community in a televised address that whoever sets aside their weapons and returns the hostages, Israel will allow them to leave and to live. But he warned that anyone who harmed Israeli hostages would pay with their lives.
While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages. Hamas is holding 101 hostages in Gaza, who are citizens of 23 countries, citizens of Israel, but citizens of many other countries. Israel is committed to doing everything in our power to bring all of them home. And Israel will guarantee the safety of all those who return our hostages. But to those who would harm our hostages, I have another message. Israel will hunt you down and bring you to justice.
Israeli leaders have long said that they would not stop the offensive in Gaza until they had crushed Hamas as a military and political force. They also had to free the hostages seized on the 7th of October. About 1,200 people were killed in the attack and 250 were taken as hostages to the city of Gaza. Of the 100 plus hostages who remain in Gaza right now, at least a third of them are believed to be dead. American officials immediately seized upon Sinwar's death to try and renew what has been stalled negotiations, hoping to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza that would free the remaining hostages and at the same time allow more humanitarian aid to go in. President Joe Biden of the US told reporters in Berlin that he had congratulated Netanyahu and would send the Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Israel in the next few days. Now is the time to move on, Biden said, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Now is the time to move on. Move on to move toward a ceasefire in Gaza. Make sure that we're moving in the direction that we're going to be in a position to make things better for the whole world. It's time to get forward and end. The British hostages home.
Yahya Sinwar, a longtime Hamas leader who assumed its top political office back in August, was known among supporters and enemies for combining both his cunning and his brutality. He built the Hamas's ability to harm Israel in service of the group's long-term goal, that is to destroy the Jewish state and in its place build an Islamist Palestinian nation. He played a central role in planning the surprise attack that happened in southern Israel on the 7th of October 2023. As the leader of Hamas in Gaza from 2017 to 2024, Sinwar quietly rekindled the group's relationship with Iran, which is a long-time patron, helping Hamas develop the ability to outsmart Israel's defenses. And all the while he was doing this, he was covertly preparing for a giant war with Israel. That war began on the 7th of October last year. Yahya Sinwar was born in 1962 in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. It is a crowded, impoverished territory. It is much like most of the rest of Gaza. The inhabitants In fact, his family and his family members were registered Palestinian refugees who had fled in the 1948 war. Sinwar studied Arabic at the Islamic University of Gaza. He became involved in Islamist politics around the start of the first Palestinian uprising, or the Intifada, against Israel's occupation, which happened in 1987. Palestinian Islamists founded Hamas. They pledged to destroy Israel and replace it with a Palestinian state. Israel, the United States, and other countries designated Yahya Sinwar as a terrorist and Hamas as a terrorist organization. He was in an Israeli prison for more than 2 decades and was later released only in 2011 as part of a prisoner swap arrangement to free an Israeli soldier who was taken into captivity. Negotiations for a ceasefire deal to release the remaining hostages has stalled, partly because Yahya Sinwar held out for a permanent agreement. He wanted a truce that would allow Hamas to retain power in a post-war Gaza. This was seen as a maximalist stand, and that was incompatible with that of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. Netanyahu sought a temporary truce that would allow Israel to return to battle within weeks. He wanted to prevent Hamas's long-term survival, to crush it both militarily and politically. And in between these two incompatible stands, the ceasefire hung in the balance. But after Sinwar's death, Hamas's remaining leadership is now demoralized, it is afraid, and that could possibly open the doors to a ceasefire. It could agree, the current leadership of Hamas, or the one that's going to replace Sinwar and Ismail Haniyeh, they could agree to compromises that Sinwar could not. In Israel, Netanyahu could make the argument that Hamas has been defeated without the need for any continuation of war. Hamas's remaining leadership is still unlikely to withdraw its demand for a permanent ceasefire or to accept permanent Israeli occupation of the Gaza Strip. Hamas's new leadership, though, might be more willing than Sinwar to hand over power to a technocratic Palestinian government in order to ensure that Hamas itself can survive in some form or fashion. It could also show more flexibility in the negotiations over the hostages, perhaps even agreeing to exchanging more hostages for fewer Palestinian prisoners. Ending the war in Gaza would not immediately contain Israel's war with Hezbollah in Lebanon, where there is an Israeli ground invasion that's ongoing, or likely not end its conflict with Iran. In retaliation to Iran's ballistic missile attack a few weeks ago, that could happen as soon as the next few days. The Israeli war machine never tires. All right, significant development overnight, the confirmation of the killing of Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, first the military leader, and then subsequently over the last few months, after the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar had become the political leader of Hamas. He has now been confirmed dead in a strike by the Israeli military. It is a huge turning point in this war. What may this mean, this particular moment? And more importantly, could this potentially pave the way for an elusive ceasefire? Let's try and make sense of this by speaking to Mr. Yaakov Amidror. He's the former National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu between 2011 and 2013, and currently he's with the Jerusalem Institute for Security and Strategy. Thank you very much, Major General Amidror, for speaking with us. First, if you could put into perspective for our viewers here in India the significance of what was confirmed yesterday, that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, has been killed. What does this mean in the context of the ongoing war? And what does this mean in the context of Israel chasing him for the last 20, 30 years now?
First, I think it's too optimistic to think that the killing of Yahya Sinwar will bring end to the war in Gaza and a ceasefire. We have a long way to do to clean Gaza from all the remnants of Hamas, and it will take time. But it's very important that Sinwar is not there anymore, because he was the symbol of Hamas, and people used to say that if Sinwar is coming out of the tunnels with the big V for victory, saying "I'm here," that will be the symbol of the success of Hamas. So this symbol of success disappeared, and there is no any connection between Hamas and success. It's a huge failure of an organization which in a barbaric way attacked Israel a year ago, butchered the civilians, raped women, killed babies, and now the leader is finished, and we will have to deal with the remnants of Hamas in Gaza in the future to build a situation in which Hamas is not a threat to anyone who might come into the Gaza Strip, to take responsibility for the civilian side of the population in Gaza, because the IDF will remain the one who is responsible for the security.
But Major General, could I ask you, yesterday after the confirmation of this news of Sinwar being killed, there was a phone conversation between President Biden of the United States and Prime Minister Netanyahu, where President Biden, and this is a sentiment shared by much of the world community, that today you have Mohammed Deif, who is the military commander of Hamas, he's been killed. Ismail Haniyeh, the former political leader of Hamas, he's been killed. And now Yahya Sinwar, who was the leader of Hamas, he has also been killed. So why not use this as a window to finally say, okay, we are stopping the war. Our objective was to kill the Hamas leadership, and we have done so.
No, our aim is not just the leadership. It's the terrorists who are part of this organization. If we leave tomorrow Gaza, we will go out of Gaza. It will take the remnants of Hamas to regroup and to reorganize themselves few months, and we will have to face another Hamas number 2 in Gaza. To be sure that Hamas is not regrouping, that Hamas is not building its capabilities, Hamas is not reorganizing itself, that Hamas is not becoming again a terror organization with military capacities, we have to stay there and to clean Gaza from all the remnants of Hamas. If we will go out too early, within year 2, I don't know how long it will take Hamas to rebuild its capabilities, and we will have to face another 7th of October without Sinwar. Other commanders will come in. It's there are 2 million people in Gaza. They will find someone to lead them.
But Major General, how long will this war go on? It can't go on indefinitely. The international community is already putting pressure on the Netanyahu administration. More than 42,000 Gazans have died. Surely at some point there has to be a timeline to end this war.
I believe that a year from now, when we will clean Gaza from all the remnants of Hamas, someone else can come in. Either it will be the Palestinian Authority or an Arab states or combination of Arab states and the Palestinian community. I don't know. It's too early to determine who will come in, but it will take us probably a year to clean Gaza and to make Hamas weak enough that others can come in. If someone is coming today, as you are offering, they will have to fight Hamas. Do you know someone in the world who is ready to fight Hamas inside the Gaza Peninsula, the Gaza Strip? I don't know about someone like that. Not the Palestinians, not any Arab state, no any international force, not the United Nations. Someone who is coming today into, if we have a ceasefire and someone will come as a substitute to Hamas, he will have to fight Hamas.
But tell me this, Major General. So you are saying you don't see this war ending for another year. So by that time, it would be 2 years since this war began. It would easily be, at least in recent decades, the longest military campaign that Israel has undertaken. And we're not even talking about the new fronts that have been opened with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and possibly, and this is what the world is most worried about, a direct retaliation, a direct confrontation between Iran and Israel. I mean, can the world afford for such a long military campaign, and ultimately for what objective, to what end? I mean, today there are 40,000 people dead after 1 year. In 1 more year, there might be 80,000 people dead. Ultimately, like you said just a moment ago, who is going to replace Hamas in Gaza? Who is going to govern Gaza after this war is over? I don't think anybody quite has an idea.
The war was not initiated by Israel, with all due respect. We just reacted to the barbarian attack of Hamas. So if you have a question about that, you have to ask Hamas, not us. We are now fighting to eliminate the ability of Hamas in the future to make a second 7th of October attack on Israel. With all due respect to the international community and all the questions that you have, our responsibility is the security of the citizens of Israel, not to answer the question that should be applied to Hamas and to ask Hamas what you had in mind when you attacked Israel and killed women, elder people, and children.
No one, Major General, with due respect, no one is arguing that Israel does not have a right to defend itself. But
so
Israel, unlike Hamas, is a democracy. It is a nation state.
Yeah.
It has to follow the rule of law. What is your objective criteria? When will you come to the conclusion that, okay, Hamas now is not in a position to launch another October 7th? Can you lay out some objective criteria for when that will be achieved and how that will be achieved?
Yes, of course. Hamas had around 40,000 members, terrorist members, at the beginning of the war.
Mm-hmm.
We succeeded up till now to kill almost 20, half of the terrorists. When we will finish to kill the other half of the terrorists, and terrorist form Hamas organization will not be in Gaza, that will be the time to call the international community, Arab states, the Palestinian Authority, come in and rebuild Gaza, because now Hamas is not a threat to anyone who might come into Gaza. Till then, if someone tries to come to Gaza, he will have to fight Hamas.
What about the new front vis-a-vis Hezbollah? And what about this very real fear that the world has that there would be a direct confrontation between Iran and Israel? What about those fears?
It's very interesting question, but it is not connected to what should be done in Gaza. We should lower the capacity of Hamas in Gaza to the level in which anyone who might come, Indian forces, Arab forces, American forces, the Palestinian Authority, will not have to fight Hamas, because we did it and Hamas does not exist as a terror organization in Gaza. Only then someone will have to take the responsibility. At the same time, we understand that we have two goals in Lebanon. One is to push Hezbollah from the Israeli borders. We are in the middle of a ground operation in which we are cleaning the area near the Israeli border. And it will take few months to push Hezbollah few kilometers to the north, so Hezbollah will not have line of sight. Hezbollah cannot launch anti-tank missiles into buildings inside Israel.
But Major General, you know this, Hezbollah can launch attacks on Israel sitting in Beirut. They have rockets that can travel up to 1,000 kilometers.
You are more than right. This is why I said that we have two goals. One is on the ground to push them few kilometers to the north so they cannot strike into Israel, not to make Hezbollah version of 7th October against the Israeli communities in the north part of Israel. This is one goal. The other one, we are doing parallelly. It's two different operations. One with the Air Force, we are reducing the firepower of Hezbollah. At the beginning of the war, the potential was that Hezbollah could launch into Israel few thousand rockets and missiles. Today, they are launching only hundreds. It's 10 times less than what was expected. Why Israel succeeded to reduce the military capability of Hezbollah? A minute, let me finish the sentence.
Okay, sure.
The firepower of Hezbollah. It's two different goals. One is done by the ground forces in the south part of Lebanon, and the other one is done by the Air Force all over Lebanon, from the Bekaa Valley to Beirut.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you are saying in the next foreseeable future, as you say, maybe in the next year, the Israeli objective is to finish Hamas militarily. They should not be in a position to launch another October 7th, kill 40,000 Hamas terrorists, as you said, to finish Hezbollah, to push them back north of the Litani River in a way that they can't launch another October 7th from that side, and also to destroy their rocket capability. As you said, they were firing in thousands. Now their ability has come down to hundreds, and also regime change in Iran. You want to do all of these three in the next year, in the foreseeable future.
We don't speak about regime change in Iran. It's too big for Israel. What we want to achieve in Iran is something very minimal. That the Iranians understand that there is a price that Iran will pay in Iran if they continue to launch missiles into Israel. Again, the initiation was not an Israeli one. The Iranians launched 300 projectiles in April against Israel. It was not Israeli initiation. The Iranians launched into Israel 200 ballistic missiles in October. It was not an Israeli initiation, it was Iranian initiation. What we want the Iranians to understand that the old strategy that they had, that they will build around Israel ring of fire by proxies, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, Shiites in Iraq and in Syria, and Iran will remain 1,500 kilometers away. No one can say anything about Iran because the Iranians are not part of the game. The game was run by the proxies of Iran. Today it doesn't work.
Viewers, the United States has alleged that Indian agents were involved in an attempted assassination plot against Sikh separatist leader Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. Pannu, as we all know, has been designated a terrorist by the Indian government and is a dual US-Canadian citizen. The indictment alleged that beginning in May 2023, Yadav, who is the alleged Indian agent, described as an employee of the Indian government at the time, worked together with others in India and abroad to direct a plot against Panun. The indictment described Panun as a political activist